For decades, the language used to describe narcissistic abuse has been inadequate. Terms like toxic relationship, love bombing, trauma bonding, and reactive abuse often minimize what victims actually experience. They frame the harm as relationship conflict instead of recognizing the systematic psychological domination that is taking place. Daniel Ryan Cotler developed the 8 stages of narcissistic psychological warfare to provide a more accurate framework for understanding how this form of abuse unfolds. Introduced in his book, Voiceless No More, The Legal War on Narcissistic Abuse, this model reframes narcissistic abuse as a structured campaign of psychological warfare carried out against the human nervous system. Just as importantly, it removes the shame that survivors often carry by showing that what happened to them was not weakness or mutual dysfunction, but a calculated system of psychological control. The first stage is indoctrination. During this phase, the abuser creates a carefully engineered false identity designed to capture trust and emotional attachment. Cotler describes this process as constructive fraud of intimacy, because the intimacy itself is fabricated as a tool of psychological capture. The second stage is psychological breakdown. Gaslighting, contradiction, and emotional destabilization begin eroding the victim's perception of reality. Memory, intuition, and self-trust start to fracture as the victim is repeatedly forced to question their own experiences. The third stage is psychological enslavement. Isolation from friends, family, and support systems gradually increases while emotional and financial dependency deepen the victim's reliance on the abuser for stability and validation. The fourth stage is mental reprogramming. Over time, the victim's identity begins to shift as the narrative imposed by the abuser replaces the victim's original beliefs about themselves and their worth. The fifth stage is psychological punishment. When resistance appears, punishment follows. Rage, humiliation, silent treatment, smear campaigns, and emotional deprivation are used to condition obedience and discourage independence. The sixth stage is psychological submission. After repeated cycles of destabilization and punishment, the victim's nervous system adapts to survival conditions and resistance begins to feel impossible. The seventh stage is psychological captivity. Even after physical separation, the psychological control may continue through trauma bonding, hoovering attempts, and post-separation harassment that keep the victim psychologically entangled. The eighth stage is destruction and erasure. In this final phase, the abuser often attempts to destroy the victim's credibility, reputation, and support systems. In severe cases, the sustained psychological damage can lead to neurological injury, medical collapse, or suicide. Cotler's 8 stages model reframes narcissistic abuse as a systematic process rather than a series of relationship conflicts. By naming the pattern, it helps survivors understand that the confusion, shame, and collapse they experienced were not personal failures, but the result of sustained psychological warfare. The full framework and the legal implications behind it are explained in Daniel Ryan Cotler's book, Voiceless No More, The Legal War on Narcissistic Abuse, available on Amazon.